want to know everything there is to know about you.
Now I'm going to introduce me.
You must have spotted her by now. She's always there.
Don't I deserve love?
Somebody has to like me best.
Hello, and welcome to the Don't Know Her podcast. I'm Michael.
And I am Scott.
And we reflect on actors who we absolutely love and we wish had more opportunities to flex their talent. And before we start talking about this week's individual, we wanted to take a moment to thank you all for all the great feedback, specifically the ratings that you've given on iTunes, which really helps people find us. So we encourage everyone to rate us again or rate us for the first time if you haven't.
Yay.
And a big shout out to those who wrote us a review. It's really lovely to hear that people are enjoying what we're doing. And again, we encourage more people to review. So who are we talking about this week?
We are talking about the unparalleled and incredibly wonderful Kathy Burke.
Kathy's and Jim have got new boyfriends. I saw them in the street with two blonde bigger boys.
No, they're two blonde bigger bun boys.
What?
No, I mean gay lovers.
Oh.
I saw them on the beach with Candice and Gemma. They're gay lovers and they're just friends.
Oh.
Yeah, and Gemma said that I was really sensitive, and she winked at me. I mean winked. And Candy said, "Where were you?" and said, "Well, you were all right."
Candy said I was all right.
And they wanted me to the club tonight.
Whoa.
But let's kind of run through a bit about Kathy. So Kathy was born on the 13th of June 1964, born and bred Londoner. She was brought up in Islington in North London and still resides there to this day. She is true to her roots. And Kathy, as a performer, kind of discovered this very young, sort of performing to her brothers when she was a kid, fooling around in school, and was actually encouraged by a supply teacher at her school who came in and just sort of got this vibe for her and said to her, "You know, there is a theatre group along the road at the Anita Theatre, literally in Islington. You should take yourself there. It's going to be a really good place for you." And at that point, she put herself on a 2-year waiting list at the age of 13. And then by the age of 15, she got in. And the Anita Theatre is a really interesting place that has kind of harnessed a lot of UK talent, such as kind of most recently, Daniel Kaluuya spent some time at the Anita Theatre. So there's a good caliber coming out of that place, and Kathy is absolutely no exception. She had her first professional acting gig at the age of 17 in a film in 1982, which was called Scrubbers. And then it was from there that Dawn French and Jennifer Saunders, they saw her and they took her under their wing, and that's what kind of became the beginnings of that sort of comedy career, which she's so known for now. From there, kind of really famously known for Harry Enfield TV programs, and also from there, she was played Perry from Kevin and Perry, those sketches that became very famous. And Perry was a creation of Kathy's. That's something that she came up with on her own previous to working with Harry Enfield, and then he loved it so much he wanted it in his show. And then in terms of sort of getting that lift off in the sitcom world, Gimme 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 as Linda LaHughes for 3 series between 1999 and 2001. But also beyond TV, she was then, of course, known, and why we're talking about her here, for roles in film through the 80s and 90s and early noughties predominantly. Kind of in the 80s, following Scrubbers, doing 3 films with Alex Cox in 1986 and 1987, Sid and Nancy being one of those. She then did Nil By Mouth with Gary Oldman, which was a really important point in her career. That was in 1997. She won the Best Actress at Cannes for that performance, which I think to this point in the podcast makes her the winner of probably one of the most prestigious awards. So that was a real moment for her and a kind of significant turning point as well. And from there, she did a few other films, Dancing at Lunasa, Elizabeth, The Martins, Once Upon a Time in the Midlands. But the thing about Kathy, which does make her different from other performers we've talked about, is that she sort of makes this conscious choice to step away from acting, which happened around about 2001. She was starting to feel a bit like a small cog in the whole kind of film machine, and said to her agent at the time that she wanted to more go towards writing and directing in theatre, which she had done previously. And going back to film, she then from there does a few smaller parts that kind of had to appeal to her. She was in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. She reprised her role of Magda in the absolutely fabulous movie, and then worked with her good friend Joe Wright in Pan a handful of years ago. So Kathy Burke is definitely a really interesting choice here, because, you know, she has chosen to, perhaps for the most part, remove herself from acting, and therefore her career could be very different had she not chosen that. So we are looking at all of these and kind of looking at her career, but also knowing that there might have been so much more had she chosen to kind of stick more on the acting path than the sort of directing, writing path that she decided was more in spirit with what she wanted for herself. But yeah, for someone who's obviously incredibly respected and stuff, she hasn't done a lot. And I find that fascinating. And I just think she is a wonderful, wonderful performer to talk about. She's so unique. I'm just a huge fan. So that's why I wanted Kathy. But you, Michael, where did you first come to Kathy? Tell me about your first memories.
When you text me and you know, we text back and forth about people we'd like to talk about.
No, we don't.
No, we don't. We don't text. We don't know each other. We don't like each other. And you say Kathy Burke, and in my head, I was like, oh, great. I remember her turning up in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, really enjoying her. She's a great character actor that does stuff. And I've, you know, done a lot of work in theatre, so know that she works in theatre.
Sure.
But kind of, to be completely open and to my shame, would think not much of, like, if someone said Kathy Burke is in this film or Kathy Burke is in this play, it wouldn't occur to me to be like, oh, this is amazing, or I should watch that. Right. After this, my view is very different.
Oh, good. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah, and I mean, watching these films, they are so varied.
Yeah.
But she does seem to be typecast quite quickly, so it would make sense why she would have given up pursuing acting and going into basically creative roles where she has control over what she's working on more so.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's interesting though with this sort of that decision that she did make, because I've heard her sort of describe it as something in her belly changing. Like she just, you know, lost kind of that feeling and therefore was just unsure if it was something to continue. And that came at a kind of a pinnacle point in her career. So it is interesting that she kind of followed that and went down into, yeah, like you say, the things that she wanted to do, which was theatre. I find her so fascinating.
The thing about watching her now, like when you describe her as unique, like something about the character she has been cast in and the performance she's given is they're just so likable. Like they can behave in ways that are like the most extreme version, let's say, is in Elizabeth. So she's playing Queen Mary, Elizabeth's older sister, very religious, you know, not very well. She has the whole weight of the country, this political unrest between Catholics and Protestants on her.
If she were brought properly to trial, she would not be found guilty, and we would all be condemned. She has many friends in Parliament.
My sister was born of that whore, Anne Boleyn. She was born a bastard. She will never rule England. Your Grace will find some proof of her treachery. I am most sure of it.
All of these like complex things she's bringing in this like very like 2 scenes, 3 scenes, not very much. And she does that all the time. Like, so she turns up in things like Anita and Me in 2002 as this like as a neighbour of the main characters, and she brings this kind of richness and this backstory.
Because they more need to, she might act tough, but well, they all need the mates, don't they?
Yes, they do.
So we can only do our best, us women, aye. Tough tits, though, ain't it?
Very tough.
There's also a really wonderful moment in that Shane Meadows film, Once Upon a Time in the Midlands, where she turns, like, so she's having a kerfuffle, let's say, with Shirley Henderson's character, and she bashes up their car.
You come anywhere near me, you nut, I'll knock your fucking block off.
Oh, listen. Anyone get hurt?
We're all hurt, Shirley, all right?
Whatever she brings to those roles, it's just so like understandable. If like she's on the brink of frustration of humanity, and it's being like unleashed in this really heartfelt and kind of considered way, despite her actions being so extreme and irrational and not what you expect of a human. And that's really hard to do. And you're right. I can't think of many people who can do that sort of thing.
No, I think there's just this authenticity to her, and she just taps into that thing that you're describing, for me, unlike anybody else. But I think it ties to who she is as a person. Like, in the past few years, she has become quite prolific for her brutal honesty on Twitter, and she has amassed this great following of people who are just like, probably want Kathy Burke to be like Prime Minister, because she just cuts into everything. She has no shame. She doesn't care. But what she's saying is always, in my opinion, she's kind of acting for the greater good, and it does happen in those sort of roles you're describing. It's sort of this person acting to represent what is not, what they've been stifled from being allowed to that point, and it's really interesting that has cropped up again and again in her career.
Yeah, and the other thing about her, or the roles and the types of films that I assume could be made because she had leverage, let's say, and can get financing, is like working class stories.
Yes.
Obviously Elizabeth is not a working class story, but like Anita and Me and The Martins, which is this lovely like family comedy, and Once Upon a Time in the Midlands and things like that. They are Nil By Mouth. And it's a really, I don't know, like, it's very rare to see that on screen. I wish that the film industry was better for people like Kathy Burke, because we'd be better for our audiences, because we would get more variation in stories. Like, I was looking at examples of like what was coming out around the time of, The Martins and Once Upon a Time in the Midlands in early like 2000, 2001, 2002. And the film that jumped out like a big British film was Billy Elliot. And Billy Elliot is about a working class young man, young boy, but he is saved by a middle class woman played by Julie Walters, and it's a sentimental, view of like, if you keep your chin up, or what's the stiff upper lip, or whatever the British things are, to like, you can be better, you can be a ballerina, but the things that Kathy Burke's attaching herself to are more like, for instance, like The Martins, which is this really like gentle comedy. Her husband in it is Lee Evans. He wants everything. He wants to go on this big holiday. He wants all these things. All Kathy Burke wants is not to be seen as scum.
Look, I mean it, Robert. We're not that sort of... You're not that sort of person.
It's all right. I know what I'm doing.
You're not scum.
I know.
I don't want to be one of them families people cross the road to avoid.
Yeah.
And it was like really took me aback when it was first said. Like, I don't think we have those sorts of conversations in like comedies, or that just doesn't happen. And again, like going back to what we initially said, like she's saying it in a heartfelt way of like, you don't need to be going for everything. Like, what we have is good. We should just make that better instead of trying to get more and making it all worse.
Yeah.
Which is what happened. That's the conflict in the story. I just think it's really striking.
No, exactly. And yeah, and that's what kind of that's why it's not like that's why I wish she had the better opportunities, because I think she could have had her choices been different perhaps, but that's why just selfishly I wish we had more of her, because I think to what you're saying, we would have more of these things, because she did get this leverage in a way that I don't think anyone like her has had before.
As we usually do, I think we should probably like look at one film in particular, and I guess the film the obvious one is Nil By Mouth, because
Sure.
that is the film that launched her, and that is a very... So it's looking at the dynamic of a relationship, so between Kathy Burke and her on-screen husband, Ray Winston.
Jesus, I mean, I feel like you really must hate me.
Don't hate you.
Well, I don't feel loved. I mean, that ain't love. I mean, can't you see the mess we're in? You not notice what we're like?
And I guess to just like simplify it, it can be seen as a story about domestic abuse, and that is the sort of, I guess that's the main thrust of the film.
Yes, it is,
that.
yeah.
Just to lighten the mood, Gary Oldman did direct and write this film, and not only that, and this is the bit where I'm excited.
Me too.
What I'm excited to share is Big Mo from EastEnders, Gary Oldman's sister, is fantastic in it.
So great.
We'll save her for an episode where we've run out of most people, but she's wonderful. So I mean, we're not going to focus on her, but she is wonderful.
She's so good. Layla Morse, we should say her name. Layla Morse.
Yeah, Big Mo.
Big Mo.
But yeah, it's such a striking film, which I've never seen before.
No, me too.
They're fantastic. All the performances are fantastic, but I can see why Kathy Burke would have been kind of launched into the film industry as somebody to get behind, as someone to be excited about, someone who doesn't feel like your traditional leading lady. So she kind of, in a positive way, everyone in the film looks like they fit in that world in real life. It's not it's not romanticized in any way. But yeah, it's heartbreaking. It's a heartbreaking film to watch.
You're exactly right. Everything she's bringing to this, I was bowled over. I mean, like I was saying, I love Kathy Burke, but I haven't seen this, which is probably her most celebrated film performance. And oh my heavens, I was floored. I was absolutely floored by it. It was... There's just such a rawness to it, vulnerability, but like you're saying, this incredible strength fighting through. There's moments in it where she just seems kind of hollowed out by her circumstances. It's so devastating, and she's doing things which are just so powerful, and to sort of compare it to something loosely, just in terms of the subject matter, there was a film a few years ago directed by Paddy Considine called Tyrannosaur, which starred Olivia Colman, and it's also a story which kind of centers on domestic abuse, and the kind of vulnerability that Olivia Colman and Kathy Burke have in these performances I find quite similar, and therefore incredibly powerful. I mean, that performance of Olivia Colman's in that film is one of my favorites ever. And now seeing this, I sort of compare it. I'm actually fighting back tears right now talking about it. I think it's so impressive.
I texted you before I put it on, and I said, how tough is this going to be? To which you said, tough. So I started it, and I, kind of waiting for it to happen, waiting for something bad to happen. And how it's done, because Kathy Burke, everyone's amazing, but it's the script and the cinematography. So, the bit where it kind of turns into what kind of a domestic abuse becomes the focus is they're in a pub. Kathy Burke's playing snooker with a different group of friends. Ray Winston is, as she says, has the hump, and comes over and basically says, "You're coming home with me." And she says, "No, I'll see you later. I still got a drink." He's like, "Where's your drink? You don't have to drink." All this it goes on. And Kathy Burke's like, whatever. She goes to take a shot with the pool stick, and the camera goes down to her, and Ray Winston's hand goes on her and pulls her up in a kind of he doesn't have to put much effort. She knows to go up. The camera follows, and it's as if something kicked in. It's like, fuck. Then, so she gets her coat. So her mother, on-screen mother, Big Mo, is there. And Kathy Burke walks away with Ray Winston and mentions that she's pregnant. And honestly, like my heart was in my mouth. The whole thing, even if so if you didn't know it was a domestic abuse sort of storyline by this point, it's very clear from what the film is doing. Because then what happens is you cut back to them being at home. It's cut through this like window into the kitchen, so you're looking from the sitting room.
Yeah, it's really impressive.
And there's this exchange that becomes like it's very heated, gets more and more heated. And then Kathy is on the floor, and he attacks her essentially in a way that is like so horrible to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is so like uncomfortable doesn't cover it. It is like so. It's a lot. It's just so well crafted in a way that like it's engaging, it's believable, it's horrific, but you're endeared. Like all of it, because Ray Winston's character is given a lot of time in the film to really expose the complexities of what's going on there. I mean, it's very hard to forgive anybody, any character that would behave in that way. And I certainly wouldn't by the end of the film. But at least the film is way more interested in creating a complex portrait. Because Kathy Burke also like behaves in ways which is heartbreaking to watch. And I don't want to spoil anymore. I feel like I feel like people, if they are interested in, you know, amazing performances and interesting storytelling and stories that you don't get to see so often on screen, and that is certainly like the standout performance in her career.
Yeah. No, completely. I mean, it was this film which was like everything she wanted, and also the point where she was like, I've had all that I wanted. I've had all I wanted as an actor. And then she changed. She said she changed after it and didn't want to do it anymore as much.
Okay, let's go on to talk about the film that I'm desperate to talk about.
Please.
Where Kathy took a trip to Ireland. With Dancing at Lunasa in 1998.
Oh, I can still see the flowers blooming round her as they met on the Isle of Capri.
If you knew your prayers as well as you know those old pagan songs, I am a righteous bitch, aren't I?
So you've won, you know, you've had this big moment. You have won this award at Cannes. Let's assume Meryl Streep gives you a call, says, I'm leading the film adaptation of the celebrated stage show Dancing at Lunasa, based on the 1990 play by Brian Friel, a very celebrated Irish writer. So it's the story of 5 sisters. One was played by Meryl Streep, who's like the lead. She is this uptight woman. And then there's Kathy Burke's sister, who is, you know, kind, basically loving and kind and supportive. Then there's these 2 kind of wilder sisters. One that's very wild because she goes off on a boat with a man. And then there's another one, the youngest, who has had a child, and on screen doesn't have much to do. On stage, there's a lot more. There's a lot more with all the characters. It is a really... Like, maybe it's better to go to you as a non-Irish person. Like, what did you think of Dancing at Lunasa?
Okay, so I saw Dancing at Lunasa, I think, when I was at school. I'm pretty sure we read it amongst another Brian Friel play when we were at school, which was called Lovers in drama. And I'm pretty sure we watched it at that point, or maybe I watched on my own, but it's all kind of connected in my head. And at that point, I thought it was fascinating. I seem to remember that everyone was great in it, that the accents were all super. Like, whoa, Meryl Streep can do no wrong. Here she is doing Irish. It's all amazing. Watching it this time, I realised that I was blindsided in my youth. The things in it sort of are a bit squiffy, and Kathy Burke's accent, for example, is not ideal, considering she also had an Irish father. It's not ideal, but she still, for me, is one of the stronger players. That aside, I think she grounds it a lot of the time, because I think some of it sort of spirals away, and Kathy Burke feels like the kind of the grounding warmth of it on screen, I would say.
So on stage, the play is about these sisters and about their hopes and their dreams, what they wanted, what is realistic for them. You know, it's a tragedy, really. Like on stage, all of that is like so, like it feels like you're directly connected to these people, and there's like a real like, I don't know. It's like, oh, if only something could be better for them. If only it wasn't so harsh, these living conditions. If only like they had a little bit of pleasure. But on film, I wasn't bored, but I certainly didn't feel much for it. Like there was one scene where I did, which is where the sisters are sitting and looking at pictures and photographs.
Who's that, Maggie?
Curly McDade, God rest him.
Curly hasn't a hair in his hair.
Bold at 17, that's why we called him Curly. Your sister could tell you a thing or two about him.
Oh, Kate, tell all. My lips are sealed.
Mine are not. You had a few wild notions about our Kate.
I had no more interest in Curly McDade than the man on the moon.
He was fair mad about it.
And they're talking about men they could have been with and talking about like their dreams and whatever. And Kathy Burke actually has this lovely moment where you realise she did have a lover.
What happened to him?
Brian went to Australia. He wrote, I answered. Australia's far away. The way things go. That's that.
And now she's here kind of making sure her sisters and all are happy. Or happy is not the right word, just content, just able to cope with their day-to-day struggle. And then suddenly the radio has started working. Kathy Burke's like throwing flour in the air and they're doing a dance sequence which would not be out of place in Mamma Mia, where
Sure.
Meryl Streep is this like uptight woman's like, oh, I'm not going to dance. And then sister by sister, they all join in and they're all dancing. And then Meryl, after like tapping her foot a little bit, is like, fuck it. Sure, I'll join the dance. And she rises to her feet for like a very long sequence of them just running around on stage. That's incredible. It is
I can
euphoric
imagine
because you're like, finally, they have it. They have this pleasure. But on film, you're like, uh-oh, like this film has taken a really strange turn.
Oh, goodness. Oh, well, I'm so glad that you had the chance to revisit Dancing at Lunasa.
I mean, it would be ripe for being remade, let's say. It would be a good story that if it was told in a different way.
Like you're saying, Dancing at Lunasa comes literally in terms of chronologically off the back of Nil By Mouth, but the film she actually helped facilitate by her the sort of the accolade of winning at Cannes for Nil By Mouth, she was then in a position where she could get things funded. And what the film that she chose to aid along the way was Kevin and Perry Go Large in 2000, because Harry Enfield came to her, because obviously they'd done it on the TV show, and said, well done on winning this. But you know, with you winning that, we could now get the money to make this happen. And she was actually so up for that.
What a couple of wankers!
Yeah, we are, aren't we?
No, my parents!
Oh, right, yeah, sorry.
She actually cites Perry, which is her own creation, as her favourite part she's ever played. So we can sort of look at things like Nil By Mouth and be like, whoa, this is like an all-time performance. But for Kathy, it's Perry, the teenage boy Perry. And this is what they decided to do in 2000. So a real interesting post-Cannes Best Actress win trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, she's really good. So Kevin and Perry is not something I know of as a TV sketch or as a film. I've never seen it. I will never see it again. No, but she's good. Like they show herself and Harry Enfield are playing like teenage boys.
Yeah.
Who basically want to have sex. Like they want to lose their virginity. And that's the storyline. And they want to go to Ibiza because they're DJs also. Or let's say they're like bedroom DJs in that they're not a professional in any way.
Mm-hmm.
But they're like, oh, if we go to Ibiza, we can be DJs and we can lose our virginity. And all sorts of like really unpleasantly like unpleasant things happen. I'm really, so do you know what, when I was watching it and making notes and being kind of analytical about it, my notes are very positive in terms of like,
wow,
you know, for a movie made at this time, so 2000, about young boys, like women so female characters as opposed to female actors, because Kathy is playing a boy in it. The female characters are powerful, like they're respected more so than I ever would have given it credit for beforehand.
Wow, that's a very interesting take. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so like it starts off and they're at this house party, and I don't really understand why, but Kevin is like gone to sleep in a bed, and then this young woman, like beautiful young woman, like takes off her clothes, is in these like this sexy underwear thing. I don't know what you call it on women. She's looking good. She's looking fine. She gets into bed with him, and I was like, oh, hell no. No.
Yeah.
But instead, like, so what happens? Like, nothing happens. They don't have sex. She's sleeping, and she's kind of sleeping in unpleasant ways as well, which is, all very fun and whatever.
Yeah, good.
Then Perry's like, oh, did you do it? And he says, yeah. Her friend overhears, and she calls him out.
Did you say you shagged me last night?
No.
Yeah, you bloody did. Stacey heard ya. You say anything like that again, and I'll smack ya, you virgin.
Which I feel like would not happen in most films at that time.
True.
And she calls him out really publicly, really like, it's just so, like, it was, I mean, we shouldn't be, like, that's a small win, but it's like, this is good that this happened.
No, I like it. Give it the wins.
So basically women are like popping zits in it and all this, like they're as disgusting as the young boys. Yeah. I mean, so it's all right. I mean, I don't know who needs to see this film. Like,
no, I think that's the thing. No, but that's so interesting that you've said all that, because I watched this film for the first time. I mean, for me, Kathy Burke is Perry. That was my first get-in with Kathy Burke. That's how I remember her most vividly. That's where it started for me on television, and then watching this film when I was quite young. And even at the time, I probably was primed for it. I maybe watched this film for the first time when I was like 12 or 13. And you'd think that, oh, what a hoot. And I didn't like it. And I was like, oh God, this film's so gross. I don't like this at all. And then watching it this time, I still sort of felt the same way, because I was just sort of tapping back into that feeling I had all those years ago. But you're right. There are really interesting points and dynamics that are happening in this. But I mean, at the end of the day, it is sort of peppered with this sort of grotty and often quite lazy humor. And it might provoke laughs because it's so incredibly on the nose about sort of teenage sexuality. I mean, it's boner joke after boner joke after boner joke after boner joke. That is literally what the film is for 90 minutes.
But wait a second. Basically, I had too much of that humor. But then they're like caught up in a bank heist, and they're like, put your hands up. And then there's this woman that he's turned on by, and he accidentally sets off the alarm with his erection. And I was like, this is so so trashy to me that it's entertaining. So maybe I was being kind to it, but that sequence in particular, when you say like erections, because you're right, it happens like, it must happen every 5 minutes that there's like, what am I gonna do? I'm like, what?
That's what it is like. I don't like watching it, maybe because it is uncomfortable, but that is what teenage boys are. So maybe I should also give it credit. And to kind of circle back to Kathy Burke, it's an incredibly well-observed performance for a middle-aged woman playing a teenage boy. She has it absolutely spot on. And this was always the joke in the TV show as well, that, he's really gross when he's around Kevin, but then Kevin's parents show up and he's very polite. Hello. And that's so true. And I'm like, oh, I understand this person. It makes sense. So I also get why it's her favorite in certain ways. Like, she came up with this character, and I think she's really, it's impressive. I think it's a really impressive, like, comedic performance for sure. Maybe more so in the series than it is in this film, to be honest. But it's the same. She's doing the same thing, and she still makes it work all those years later.
And she gets to poo in the sea, and then have Harry Enfield's Perry eat it, or Harry Enfield's Kevin eat it. So, I mean, I don't know what more you want. Sorry, did she win the Can Award for Kevin and Perry or for Nil By Mouth?
Yeah, actually, I think we've got it muddled up. I think it might have been the other way around. That makes sense.
There's something about like her Perry and that sort of humor, that sort of characterization, which is appealing of her performances. So like in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, one of her first lines of dialogue is,
I don't know about you, George, but I feel seriously underfucked.
I'm sure it's in the script and whatever, but the way she delivers it and all, it's just like kind of, again, like she has this humanity and you like it's genuine, it's authentic, but it's also funny and playful. So, and she's so good in that film. But yeah, so I'm really grateful for all these things. I'm grateful, like, you know, so she's taken this decision not to act, but to do something like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, which she is a tiny part of. Like, it feels like a privilege now to have her on screen in those sorts of roles.
Yeah, completely. The interesting thing about Kathy Burke in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy is that to go back to her decision to stop acting in sort of around 2001, she did sort of create these caveats for herself and said to her agent that one person she wanted to work with after seeing Let the Right One In was Thomas Alfredson, the director of that film, and who went on to direct this film. And he actually, I don't know if he went to Kathy Burke or if the script landed at her and she was to read for it. And whereas she had been taking roles because she was concerned about paying the mortgage, that was kind of her, you know, if I'm acting, it's only because I feel like I need to. This one, she was like, no, I want to play this. This is such a good part. Even though it's a very, very small part, it's a very important part in the film. And it's a like one scene queen, as I would call it, like moment, like, whoa, this is like, it's so perfectly for her. It's absolutely like she owns it. Like you're saying, she comes across as incredibly authentic. You fully believe this woman is a real person. She's absolutely a real person. And you feel the chemistry because she had that with Gary Oldman. So then they had the scene in the film that she is in is with Gary Oldman, her old sort of friend and colleague. And you can feel all of that important chemistry for this scene. And she just nails it. It's so great.
There's a story you must have heard that Carla has set up a secret cell. The personnel are all ex-military, trained to handle deep penetration agents. Moles.
There are always stories, Connie.
But what if this story was true?
But the thing about Kathy, which is maybe why I find myself drawn to her all the time, like I have this sort of addiction to her, is that she's so charismatic, but she's so naturally charismatic. There's no trying going on. I think she just reads as very knowing and wise, and it's great. And in this, it feels quite true to who she is as a person, but then it is a performance, it is a character, and it all just slots together so well. In a film which I love, by the way. I love Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. Yes,
an incredible film. And because, you know, we're going to have to go on and talk about what we want for the future and stuff. But I feel like, you know, so Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy is this very male-heavy movie.
Yes.
And, you know, it would be sacrilegious of us two gay guys not to talk about and celebrate her first ever movie, Scrubbers, which has her with Pat Butcher, Pat St. Clements, and also Miriam Margolyes, to just mention two people in this kind of female prisoner drama, like very much of like a punk sort of aesthetic and energy.
You're working yourself up into a week in the punny if you go on like this.
She can't help it, miss. She's wound up, isn't she?
In!
Go on, miss, let her off. She ain't done nothing wrong before.
Dirty bitch.
Can I get me plate, miss?
Do what you usually do, Glenys. Catch one.
What a way to introduce someone like Kathy Burke. Like, she's playing this, you know, supporting character in this ensemble. She's mostly obsessed with smoking. She's constantly told she's going to die from it, but she doesn't give a fuck. And she's brilliant.
Yeah, she is. I mean, that's it. Kind of when she's in this film. So it's like you say, it's a Borstal set drama. These young women in what is essentially kind of Borstal prison for young offenders, and it's about these two women who break out, but then are sort of taken back in, and it's the lives of all these young ladies in Borstal. And you know, it's like baby Kathy. She's 17 at the time, her first professional job, but she does just have this great energy and presence from the off. And in an otherwise sort of rough, bleak type film, Kathy is sort of the light relief, and when she's on the screen, you're like, oh yeah, here you are good. And it makes complete sense that people saw this film and then like French and Saunders taking her under their wing and being like, you are special, you are going to be great. But I mean, also interestingly with Scrubbers, I think as her first, of course, it was going to inform a lot about her career, but really specifically, it did as well, in that she worked with Mai Zetterling. She was the director of this, who others might know as the aunt in the Witches, the Roald Dahl adaptation from the 90s, the Nick Roeg film. Working with her for the first time, they just loved each other straight away, and they just got each other, and Mai Zetterling really took her under her wing and was, from the off, being like, you're amazing, you're great, but maybe don't just lean into acting. Think about what you want otherwise. You want to write, you want to direct. So this woman really informed her career from day dot in terms of her professional acting life. But it is a really, like you say, it's such a spirited film. I thought it was I'm so glad to have watched it. I mean, it's quite low rent. 1982, like you say, Borstal set drama. It's sort of very much of its time and kind of was probably emulating what you were seeing with male stories, but you get a very female, in fact, an entirely female story pretty much. There's only men in it for all of a minute otherwise. And yeah, I'm so glad to have gone back to the beginning of Kathy's career and watched this one. And yeah, thank you, BFI, for having this available, because it's one of those that could have just easily slid away. And I'm so glad it hasn't.
Okay, so before we start talking about what we hope for Kathy Burke in her career, in her acting career that she doesn't want to have, how about we do a little game? So I've got some questions.
I would love that.
And the prize will be...
Oh, I mean, let me say the prize, because Kathy Burke is someone who, for years, I've wanted to be on my sort of, fantasy dinner party. So I would just like to have or maybe just one-on-one time. I just want to go for a coffee and maybe a fag with Kathy Burke. I just want to sit down and chat to her for an hour. That's all I want, and I would be happy forever.
Well, do you know what I was going to say? I was going to do like a gimme, gimme, gimme setup, but you and Kathy have to live together for a week.
Perfect. Even better.
And it'd be recorded, put on TV. It's going to be fantastic. So that's the prize.
Okay.
For you, maybe not for her. I don't know.
Yeah, no, bad news for her.
Okay. So how many times is the word fuck used in Nil By Mouth?
Oh, wow. Well, it's not obviously the most ever, because that title, I think, still belongs to The Wolf of Wall Street, or if not, it's very close to being the top. But I mean, it is a lot. How much would it be? Let's say 110.
No. So it's 428. The word was used every 3.34 minutes on average.
Oh my god! Well, maybe my statistic is wrong. Maybe Wolf of Wall Street, because I don't imagine it's used that much in Wolf of Wall Street.
Well, Wolf of Wall Street is like 10 hours long, so the word is probably used a lot more. I don't know. No, I have a lot of love for it. I just get nervous when you see straight lads mention it as like, oh, isn't this guy really cool? I'm like, I'm sorry, did we watch the same movie?
Exactly.
So my next question is, who did Kathy Burke recommend to be cast in the film of Atonement, directed by her pal, Joe Wright?
Oh, that's a good question, and I know the answer because I listen to everything that Kathy Burke has put on podcast in the past 10 years. James McAvoy, and I love the whole story behind that, because she had cast him in... Was it a play? Did she cast him on the stage?
So she directed him on in a Jonathan Harvey play out in the open, and that was at the Hampstead Theatre in 2001. Yeah. So yeah, she rated him, and apparently Joe Wright had loads of famous names or whatever. But so she helped get him cast in what I would say is one of his best roles.
For sure.
Okay, so this is the most exciting part of the quiz today. We have clips of actors doing an Irish accent.
Oh, wow.
To celebrate the one and only Dancing at Lunasa. And I'm going to ask you to identify each person.
Okay, great. Ready?
They couldn't defeat us by force of arms, but now I swear they're trying to defeat us by force of verbiage. The English language was never meant to be spoken like that.
Oh my, that is so funny. I literally have no idea, but I just love the rhythm of that one. It's so great.
So any guess? Any guess?
I tried to be better. No, I can't pick up on whose voice that is at all, actually. No, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to pass.
So that is the one, the only, Julia Roberts in a film that's really big in Ireland, Michael Collins.
They couldn't defeat us by force of arms, but now I swear they're trying to defeat us by force of verbiage.
Okay, yes, of course it is her. I can hear that now. Oh my god, that is absolutely brilliant, and I'm going to watch that film immediately. Oh gosh, that's so funny.
Okay, number two.
Number two, okay.
Stay right where you are. Don't flutter an eyelid, or I'll stab you. I'll stab you through.
Oh my fucking hell. People are bad. We are bad at this, aren't we? Nobody can do it. It sounds like quite a young or a naive kind of voice, but maybe it's just putting on. I have no idea. This time I think it's a Brit, though.
No.
No, it's an American again.
It's one of my favourite actors. In my mind, she can do no wrong, even when she does a lot of things wrong. Including this accent and this film.
Oh, I don't know. So maybe it's, I don't know, is it Nicole Kidman in Far and Away?
Yeah! Ding, 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 ding!
Yes, okay, good. Thank you for the clue.
So it's just before, so she has a pitchfork, Tom Cruise has invaded her barn, and she, soon after this clip, accidentally stabs him with her pitchfork. As you do.
Stay right where you are. Don't flutter an eyelid, or I'll stab you. I'll stab you through.
Oh, brilliant. You're right, too. Oh my god, that is great. Oh, wow, this is really fun. Okay, let's have another one then.
Look, can I be frank? I have always loved Cartier. I think, historically, this has been the most significant house in the world. But there is a whole generation out there who mispronounce your name.
Oh, that one didn't sound too bad. You're going to think I'm terrible. That one sounds okay to me.
Irish people, I'll DM you Scott's personal phone number so you can get in touch with him about that accent.
Oh no. Okay, hold on. Cartier. Who could it be? Something about...
It's a female-led remake or reboot of a very male-centric story.
Ocean's 8.
Yeah, Helena Bonham Carter. Look, can I be frank?
Look, can I be frank? I have always loved Cartier.
Look, can I be frank?
Oh my gosh, that is so good. I totally forgot that she was playing Irish in that.
I think she does some of the time too.
She's really good. That's what I think.
Number 4.
Okay.
Want to get Capone? Here's how you get him. He pulls a knife, you pull a gun. He sends one of yours to the hospital, you send one of his to the morgue.
I think that's Daniel Day-Lewis in Gangs of New York.
Whoa, okay.
No, it's not. No, because that's the flip. No, Cameron Diaz is that because of course he's fucking Irish. It was a stupid thing for me to say. It sounds like Daniel Day-Lewis, doesn't it?
No.
Oh no, it's Sean Connery.
Yeah, in his Oscar-winning performance
in The Untouchables. The
1987 film.
He pulls a knife, you pull a gun. He sends one of yours to the hospital, you send one of his to the morgue.
There's nothing Irish about it.
No, it's weird. It does just sound like Sean Connery, so that was a huge boob on my part. Sorry.
So last but not least, number 5.
There's these green fields, and there's us. Whatever that is, it holds me here.
It's my fucking least favourite ever. It's fucking Gerard Butler in P.S. I Love You.
It's not!
What?
It's
Matthew Good? Is it from Leap Year?
The other Irish classic, no.
Oh my god, it is actually an Irish person. It's Jamie Dornan.
Yes.
Is that in the Wild Mountain Thyme?
Wild Mountain Thyme.
Oh, fuck
yeah.
There's these green fields, and there's us. Whatever that is.
Okay, so I think you've done well enough for this one-off spin-off of Gimme Gimme Gimme.
No, that's so not well enough.
No, you'll get it. I'm sure Kathy will be up for it. She loves hanging out with people.
Gays. She loves hanging out with gays, so...
Well, yeah. Yeah, as the documentary Gimme Gimme Gimme, yeah. She seems to love us all.
Documentary. That's great.
Okay, so this is an interesting one because we're talking about
Sure.
someone who actively doesn't want to act.
But we're pushing you, Kathy.
Yeah,
Come
no,
back.
but like,
no, she would do it for the right things. That's the thing here, and that's why I put, because she said for small parts and for the right part, I will still want to do it. So I feel okay with the kind of wish list that I do have for her. It's a bit of a tricky one because I would have her do anything, but I was trying to think of what would work. So interestingly, in terms of the past few years, where she hasn't acted a lot, she did star in Phoebe Waller-Bridge's series Crashing, which came before Fleabag. And she very much chose to do that because she loved Phoebe Waller-Bridge. She loved seeing Fleabag when it was on stage before it was a TV show. And she's this very small part in Crashing. It just took her a day of filming. She's playing sort of a pervy aunt who's like touching up Phoebe Waller-Bridge.
Oh, she is so incredible in this. Like, her performance alone is worth watching for Crashing because
Yeah.
she's built up as like, oh, I'll get some money from this woman.
Yeah.
And
it's like, oh no.
it is, yeah.
What is this that you're wearing?
It's ridiculous.
It's a onesie.
It's divine. But where does it open? And how does one get in? Is it a nightmare to get it off?
No, I've got the knack. Honestly, I can have it off in seconds, Auntie.
It's so good. So yeah, basically, my first one is just, if Phoebe Waller-Bridge wants to write and hopefully also direct, perhaps, a film, Kathy is probably going to be there for you because she loves you. And I think Phoebe Waller-Bridge really understood how to use Kathy Burke in that. So for me, that's a match made in heaven. More of that, please. Let's have that on the big screen. Kathy Burke rocking up and stealing everything like she can do. And more of that, please.
Yeah, that was on my list too.
Good. Oh my God, we're in sync today.
I also had thinking about the sort of stories she's interested in and whatever, like Shane Meadows. So she was in a Shane Meadows film, which we briefly referred to at the start. The Once Upon a Time in the Midlands, which she had a small part in this. But Shane Meadows is someone who, when he's good, like his films are terrific. So like my favorite of his is actually Somerstown, which is this kind of gentle portrait of kind of being young. Being a child. Anyway, I feel like something between them maybe could work. I don't know. I'm just like somebody I would like to champion from, behind the scenes to do that. And the other thing I was thinking alongside that was, I wonder if Kathy has projects she wants to get off the ground. So whatever it is, like give it to her. Give her the money. Do that.
Oh my God, that's it. We're literally synced it up today. I literally put, if she wants to write and direct something for herself, or even not for herself, just whatever, just like do it. But I would love that. I assume she wouldn't because she's kind of shirking from fame. I don't imagine she's going to write herself well, maybe she would write herself a small part if she wrote and directed something for the screen. But yeah, I would be absolutely fully on board for Kathy to put her own stuff on there. And I really like the Shane Meadows idea too. But also in terms of just like a type, I don't know why I was thinking of this. I think it's because like I listen to her so much and I listen to her over and over again. And I do just think of her as this wise, sage-like person that if you think of like the Matrix and the Oracle in the Matrix, I would love to see her have a part like that. Like, I don't know, like telling the future. I mean, I know they're doing the new Matrix film, but I'm sure if the Oracle's in it at all, then it's probably going to be the same cast. I don't know, but that's a part like that. I just think, because she is so good at these one scene things, and normally I would champion for them to do everything, but Kathy just wants to work for a day, so I think something like that would be good, where she just owns the moment, and I don't know, I just find her presence so incredibly enrapturing and engaging. And something like a part like that would just be wonderful. So yeah, that was my other sort of thought of how to place her.
Yeah, there was I was trying to think of like what roles have there been in the last few years that Kathy might have been amazing at. And the one that stood out to me, and this is a filmmaker I will talk about a lot, is Marielle Heller's Can You Ever Forgive Me? And there's something about, that character, and the film is played incredibly well by Melissa McCarthy,
Yes.
who has this kind of wealth of history and has this kind of chip on her shoulder and has this fascinating position in life, because this woman is a lesbian and because at that time she hasn't formed any meaningful connection, and not that is a problem, but she's kind of, it's her and her cat. She's not creatively very satisfied. She hasn't much going on, and there's that film is going into a deep well of a character study. You are focused so much on this woman,
Yeah, sure.
and you go on a journey with her. I think a character like that, with a director like Marielle Heller, who's so well, has such a good steer on how to convey that sort of story cinematically, would be amazing. Another film which I do not rate, but I think a sort of part would be good, is The Reader. So The Reader is, about a woman. Nobody can see this, but Scott just made a face here we're talking about this movie, which I feel the same about The Reader. The Reader is not a movie I rate highly. I'm sure at one point we'll have to discuss for some actor or whatever who's in it. But it's Kate Winslet's Oscar-winning role where she plays an officer who has a history with the Nazi Party, and it's basically centered around a court room where she has to talk about whether or not she's guilty of doing this horrific act. Someone like Kathy Burke would have been far more fascinating in that part, or something, but there's something about a character that has the weight of the world on their shoulders, but they're still pushing through.
Yes.
Which is why The Reader came to me. Kate Winslet again is fine. Kate Winslet's fine in the movie. I love Kate Winslet. I wouldn't have given her an Oscar for that, but Kathy Burke would have been a far more interesting casting choice.
You are not wrong at all.
And that's kind of why I assume she decided to stop acting or pursuing it in that way, because those sorts of parts would be traditionally given to someone who's more traditionally a leading lady, like Kate Winslet, or and I can imagine the parts, by 2000s and whatever, dried up, they were not that interesting for her.
Yeah, well, I guess to go back to the My Zetterling Scrubbers thing again, that's a seed that she also planted, and not in a mean way, and this is what Kathy Burke would say, but she kind of cited her as being the fat, funny one in the corner, and you're not going to get all the parts that you dream of. But Kathy was like, well, I'm all right with that. That sounds okay to me. But I think quickly realised after doing a few bits and pieces and getting really great work that maybe thinking there was a bit more of a ceiling on it, or actually I think for her it was at the point that fame started coming in. So there's a lot of reasons why she didn't. But that's a good point, and I'm sure the parts, or certainly really interesting and leading parts, were probably few and far between.
So thank you, Scott. It's been a real, I'm so glad you suggested Kathy Burke.
Good. I'm glad I suggested her. She's wonderful. I truly, truly love her so much, and I'm just so glad to get to talk about her.
So where can people find us?
Okay, so if you want to drop us an email, send us your thoughts, ideas of who to come next, all of that fun stuff, you can email us at don'tknowherpod@gmail.com, or you can get us on Twitter or Instagram at don'tknowher_pod.
Yes, and I think we're going to put out that amazing dancing clip from Dancing at Lunasa on our social media channels, so jump on it. It's worth it alone.
And we will all get together and skip around, because we're getting to that point in this pandemic where we can do that. So let's.
Well, in Ireland, we do it every Tuesday anyway, so it's not a...
Oh, sure, of course, naturally. You were doing it when I joined this call earlier.
I was doing it before Meryl Streep made it cool.
Of course.
And please, as we said at the start, give us, ratings and reviews wherever you listen to our podcast, if that's possible. That really helps people find us. And yeah, no, it's been a real joy.
It has been a joy, as always. Thank you so much, Michael. You have a lovely rest of your day.
Yeah. Top of the morning to you.
Top of the morning to you too. Bye.